Sure. My name is Mary Roach. I'm a nonfiction author, and I often write about the human body, not always, but my best known book is Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers, and the new one is Replaceable You.
When does the book come out officially?
I don't know when you're not airing this for a while, but it comes out on the 16th, which is tomorrow. So this
Tomorrow.
is the eve of publication right now
Very,
as we are speaking. Yeah.
very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's very exciting. So yeah, this will come out in September. So the book is, if you're listening to this, the book is out now. Go check it out. Before we get into that, though, there are, like I mentioned before, there are some questions I like to ask everybody who comes on the podcast. This show is based around my obsession with death, the amount I think about it, and sort of just like that world that I live in, and just looking for people to talk to about death. And I'm always curious what people's relationships with death is like. How often are you thinking about it? Is it something you worry about? What do you consider your relationship with death like right now?
Because I am in my 60s now, I it does cross my mind more, but I have to say I the thing that I fear is not death per se, but the lead up to it. In other words, decrepitude, debility, pain, senility,
Yeah.
that whole ugly package. I mean, who knows what's coming my way? But that I find as I age, I think about that far more than I ever did. But death itself, I feel like death is kind of, you know, things are almost set up so that by by the time you've been through all the pre-death stuff, you're like, okay, death, you know what, that big nap, I'm okay, bring it on. Like it's probably not like that, but I have this sense of it not being such a terrible thing, depending on your last few months are like.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a big part of for me as well, right? Is like the leading up to it, like you said, like those like all the stuff that happens beforehand. I definitely fear the whole, possibility of there just being nothing forever afterwards. That's a little terrifying too.
Yeah,
But
but if there is nothing, you're none the wiser.
I know, but it's still just it's scary now. It's like it just freaks me out
You,
now. Yeah.
yeah, you are like my husband.
Yeah.
He thinks about, like, he'll wake up in the middle of the night going, I'm just not going to be here. I'm just not going to exist for like millennia. I'm just
Or
gone. And like,
yeah.
I don't think about that stuff. I'm scared enough of the decrepitude, senility, et cetera, that
Sure.
I don't
Yeah.
really have room for fretting about the being gone. But
All right. Well, it
yeah,
sounds like we should have your husband on the podcast. He seems to really get it.
he's in the next room. Do you want me to bring him in?
I'll shoot you an email. We'll book that one next.
Okay.
I'd love to chat with him. I mean, yeah, I totally get that. I mean, that is so much of my life is just having those thoughts and just playing all of these different scenarios in my
Robert,
head
you're so
constantly.
young. You're so young. How is this? How did this?
I know.
Where'd this come from?
I know it's a whole thing. I try not to let the guests interview me, and I appreciate the question. It's really I don't know what it is. I was doing this podcast. I was interviewing somebody else a few weeks ago, whatever it was, and it was right around my birthday. I just turned 38 years old, and I was not complaining, but I was mentioning, the bits of anxiety that came with aging another year, and he looked at me like I was an asshole, which is fair. He's a bit older than I was, and his response was basically, "I would kill to be 38 years old again." And I try and use that perspective and think that way. And yes, I am young, but I don't know. I mean, it's just there's nothing traumatic has happened. I have lost some friends. Everyone's kind of lost people around, my
Hmm.
age, but I don't know. My brain just can't not think about it
Well,
20 times a day.
it can't help that you're doing a podcast, and so every time someone comes on, you have to think more about it and talk about it. And you need to do a podcast about flowers or something. I think you need to switch topics.
I had a friend who told me you should do one episode about death and then the next one should be like about life. Like it should be celebrating being alive and it should be a back and forth. And I kind of liked that idea, but I feel like honestly, I feel better after having these conversations. It's the being stuck in my head. It's the thinking about it
Hmm.
alone in my room. Like your husband, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, where am I? What's going, it's the when your heart does a weird flutter or you get a weird chest pain, you're like, this is it, or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just it's getting it out. Having
Hmm.
someone to talk to for an hour
Right.
about death genuinely helps me. I think more than anything else really could, because it's
Yeah.
just
But you know what I find again though, it's more the dying than the being dead. But I feel like if you've been around someone who's in their final days or hours, and both my parents are deceased, and I have friends, at my age, everybody knows somebody who's had a parent die, and I have never heard about, I've never certainly never witnessed anybody panicking or being afraid, like in their final stages of life when they're, that if they're, still conscious and communicative. I don't hear people going, holy shit, I'm going to be dead in a few days. What the hell? This is terrifying. Give me more sedative. I don't know, maybe
yeah.
because they are sedated, but I don't, I mean, it'd be interesting. I'm sure you've had hospice nurses on, hospice personnel.
Yeah.
I mean, do you hear that patients express this fear of like, oh my God, I'm going to die and I don't want to, and I'm terrified? Is that a,
No, I mean you're completely right. Almost everybody says, and with doing this podcast and sharing things on social media, I've created this algorithm of just death content. Like it's all I get, when I'm scrolling through with like certain accounts. And any sort of person who said like a near death experience or, has been brought back through resuscitation or whatever it is, everyone says it's the most peaceful thing I've ever experienced. I've had hospice nurses on. I had this woman on who worked as a nurse in Canada. She would strictly do assisted death. And
mhm,
so she was there with people assisting, end of life. And even then, she was like, it was beautiful. It was like
yeah,
everything just sounds great, for the situation being. So, yeah, that does help a little bit, I guess, as well. But my brain just really won't let me find the peace
yeah,
part of it.
yeah.
Not yet.
How big is this community of people who with similar feelings as you? I feel like it is a community of people who think about it, who are obsessed with it. If obsessed, well, that's the title of your podcast. So,
Sure.
people, I mean, how much of a community is that? I'm curious.
I definitely have discovered a lot more of a community since social media has continued to grow,
Yeah.
especially with TikTok. I mean, the amount of people that are sharing death content on the internet is pretty incredible. Again, like I said, I've sort of gotten wrapped in this algorithm of mostly just death content. And a lot of it is hard to watch in the sense of it's just like people losing parents. A lot of
Hmm.
people post about when they lose a parent. There's also a lot of people who are my age or younger who are dealing with terminal cancer
Hmm.
or just basically, created an account online and they're just showing their daily life while going through chemo, while still
Yeah.
working a job and all these things. It definitely exists. I don't think it's as massive as like other types of communities on the internet, but I don't know how many people are obsessing about it in sort of a negative way, like I can sometimes, but there's definitely a lot of people that want to talk about it and share stuff on the
Hmm.
internet to a certain
Yeah.
extent.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, in terms of survivors, a lot of, I'm sure, communities about processing grief, and also kind of death positive communities. And but the specific fear of death, is I wonder if is there a name for that? There's those long lists of very
Yeah.
specific phobias.
Yeah.
Does it have like
I don't know.
thanatophobia? I don't know. I
There's,
bet there's
yeah,
an actual term for it.
there's definitely, I'm sure, some sort of clinical diagnosis that I could probably get. I mean, I go to therapy. I go to therapy. I don't go to therapy for that specifically. I go for more of just a general, the just
Yeah.
general therapy. But it's something I've mentioned before. My therapist knows I do this podcast. It's brought up, but I don't know if I fit in like the medical term. I don't think it's healthy all the time. I've definitely gotten better, and I truly believe this podcast has helped. I've
Hmm.
been doing it consistently for just about 4 years now. So I mean, I'm having hour-long conversations at least some 2 to 3 times a month with complete strangers for the most
Hmm.
part. And I think that there's so much value in that for me just because I get to talk about death and the people in
Yep.
my life, my friends don't want to hear about that all the time, and I understand that. And I think it's also great because it's just like, how often do you sit and talk to another human for an hour and not look at your phone and not be
Hmm.
distracted by a million things? So I think there's like a lot of different healthy points to doing this, and
Yep.
it definitely helps. I always feel better afterwards. It doesn't always last that long, but I do feel better after doing it.
Hmm.
And I get to meet interesting people like you, and I get to read interesting books and have really interesting conversations. So there is a lot of positives to it, but I legitimately do think about death way too much, and it is a problem. And I just try and, just kind of go
Yeah.
with it.
Do you have plans to donate any of your, like to donate your body to research or your organs or anything? Because I found that, when I wrote Stiff, people would respond sometimes to me saying that they loved the idea of, as a dead person, doing something helpful,
Yeah.
something practical, something generous. It was a way to add something positive to death, basically, by knowing that some part of you will be used to help someone else.
Yeah, I'm an organ donor. I'm a big fan of all of that. I will say though, I do love the idea of sort of an absurdly large funeral. Like I do want there to be a celebration. I don't know if I need
Oh, you
to
could still do that.
absolutely.
You can still do that. You'd just be
I
missing some pieces.
I go back and forth on that a little bit, but yeah, I would love to. I mean, if there's an opportunity
Yeah.
for me to help somebody by donating an organ and whatever the situation is, yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. And then on top of that, yes, I would love, just a ridiculously absurd funeral for myself. I think about that a lot too.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
been it's been discussed on here, but yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I think that there's definitely some research that needs to go into where exactly it's going. I've unfortunately read some scary stories about people donating their body to science, and it doesn't necessarily go to where they're
Yeah.
they're thinking. But yeah,
Yeah. And unfortunately, those stories, they make the press, they make the news, and that does happen.
yeah,
But it really tarnishes the whole practice and makes, a lot of people are then reluctant to
totally.
donate. So yeah,
Yeah,
I know there are rotten people in every field. Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but yeah, of course, if
But the
the
good thing
situation
is
came.
you're dead, so you're not going to care. You're just not going to care. I mean, I'm assuming. Who knows if you're like some spirit hovering above going, "No.
No,
No.
it's
Put
yeah.
that back."
It's right. That's the beginning of your afterlife. It's just watching somebody just sell your body parts on the internet.
Packing it up and putting it in the
Not
UPS
a yeah,
package and
not a great start. But
no.
I think, of course, you do the right research, you'll find a good place. And yeah, I'm
Yeah,
definitely
for the most part,
yeah, I
things
think
happen
yeah,
as they're supposed to. Yeah, but yes,
absolutely.
there are those stories. Yeah.
So before we get into the book here, which I'm excited to talk about, there is one other question that I do like to ask everybody.
Hmm.
Do you remember the moment you realized that you were going to die one day? Like, is there a specific memory that you have where you're like, "Oh wow, I'm gonna die one day"?
I don't think I do. I mean, it must have been pretty young. I
Yeah.
remember the specific moment in second grade where my friend Heidi's brother told me how babies are made. I remember that, and I remember going, no freaking way. This guy's got that wrong. But I do not remember.
Oh, that's so
I
funny.
can remember as a kid I must have been in either first grade or kindergarten. I remember when our cat got run over.
Yeah.
I remember that moment, and why do I remember that moment? Probably an early example of being aware of death, but
Sure.
no, I don't remember. I don't remember that moment. I can remember when my stepdaughter, when she was around 7, expressed kind of not obsession, but she thought about that in a way that I was like, got to be genetic because your dad is just like that. Like, oh my God, you're
Yeah.
7 years. I mean, she was 7 or 8, I don't know, and was talking about death in this way that I thought, oh, you poor thing, you're already worried about it, and you're not even in middle school yet.
Yeah, I would be so curious to know if that just sort like where that came from, or if, like you're saying, maybe she did hear somebody in the house talking about it or bringing it up, and that sort of sparked it. But
Yeah, or maybe just some weird genetic brain quirk. I don't know.
right, yeah, that's
I
so
don't know because
interesting.
it didn't seem to be linked to a film she had seen or a conversation. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just remember being surprised that she was thinking about that. But it's probably really common at that age. When you first hear about it, it's got to be kind of a weird thing to process. And then you immediately as a kid go to that means my parents are going to die, and it's the consequences of that are not very pleasant for a kid. So I'm sure that it's pretty common around that age.
I'm always just kind of curious to see what people remember, and I do feel like even if you don't remember, I'm sure there was probably a moment, like like you were saying, you had some minor experiences where you probably did process it at some point, and then you're a child, so it's like
Yeah,
something
yeah. I
distracts
think
you.
my dad was 65 when I was born. So I grew up always kind of thinking he could die any minute now. I remember
Yeah,
at college, my junior year, I was studying abroad in London, and every time the phone would ring, because people didn't communicate that much way back then by phone, I'd be, uh-oh, my dad's dead. He wasn't. I
yeah,
came home and he was fine for another few years, but he was in his 80s then, and so it was right around the corner for me always, not my own death, but my dad's death, because he was a lot older than your average dad.
sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess that sort of would be a starting point for you and your relationship with death then, right? Is
Yeah.
sort of like seeing it in your parents
Yeah.
and
Of
that sort
course.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate you digging in there a little bit.
Sure.
I know it's not the most exciting question to answer, but I think it's interesting. I have a very specific memory of realizing it for the first time, and I just
How old
want
were you?
I was embarrassingly old. I
Oh,
was I was like
you mean like 30?
15.
No.
I was like 15 probably when it like really clicked.
Oh. I mean, but
And
you knew like when somebody would said, "Oh, so and so's grandparent died."
totally.
You knew what it was.
I had been to
Right.
funerals. Yeah.
Right.
I'm
Right. But
just
it
like
just didn't sink in until you were 15,
it
you're
didn't
saying.
my brain didn't have like that click where it was like, "Oh, that's also going to happen to me."
Mm.
I
Mm-hmm.
just was like, "Oh yeah, people die and that's what happens. I'm 15, I'm going to live forever." And then it clicks one day and it was I mean
Oh.
the beginning of it all, I would imagine. But
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Right, right, right. That's
yeah,
interesting that you were so young. I mean, when it clicked in a way that it became
sure.
kind of a ominous,
Yeah.
foreboding part of your thinking.
I mean, I literally I could picture where I was. I was in school. I was in high school. Like I was walking down the hallway. Somebody had said something, and it just like kind of clicked in that moment. And then I'm just like walking to class, and I'm like, I'm gonna fucking die. Holy shit! And then I had to like do math afterwards, and I'm like, I don't know how. I don't know how I'm supposed to.
See, the math was probably good therapy, very distracting.
Yeah,
Like if you there was I reported years ago on motion sickness research, and they do this thing where they put the subject on, they called it the human rotisserie, and they were like rotating like a chicken,
yeah.
and then they had them one group did math problems in their head, and that prevented them from getting motion sick for some reason, that distraction. So
Huh.
I think math therapy, we could be onto something.
Yeah, I think just like tricking your brain, right? You just have to like kind of trick it,
Yeah.
distract it. I mean, there's like all kinds of like I don't know where I read this, but it was very similar. Like with anxiety and panic, they're like just start looking at things and naming colors, and it's like just do. And I think one of them was math, where it was like do.
Distraction,
Yeah,
man. Distraction is
it's the
the
key.
answer.
It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
Man, there's
Yeah.
nothing better.
See, so you're doing the opposite of that by having a podcast about death.
Instead of yeah, finding ways to distract myself, I'm like, let's just literally talk about it for
You
an
are
hour.
feeding the obsession on a regular basis. But that's
It's
okay.
yeah, it's I swear
It's
it
like you said,
helps.
it's therapeutic. It's
It
therapeutic.
I mean, there are times after I'm done talking to somebody where I'll have to like leave my house and like go for a walk because I just feel so good afterwards.
Oh, that's great.
It really is
Wow.
incredible. Yeah, I don't know. It's an odd thing, but it works. So we're just gonna keep doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I think talking about it and even reading about it. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
when Stiff came out, I was kind of concerned that, people that somebody maybe who had lost a loved one would find the tone of that book too kind of casual or the humor might be off-putting. But
Yeah.
I every now and then would get emails from people saying that they found it therapeutic, that it just made being dead part of life.
Yeah.
In other words, it just took the mystery away in a way. It's like, okay, you die and this happens. And then if you want, you can do these useful things, but let's just call it like it is. You're dead, and none of the ways of being dead are particularly attractive, burial, cremation, whatever. But you know what? It's so what? You're dead. You're not going to know.
Yeah.
Somehow just talking about it or reading people reading about it
Yeah.
was somehow comforting. I didn't expect that to get, it's not like I'm getting big bags of mail about it, but occasionally people do write with that sentiment of gratitude.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I will sometimes tell people, "Oh, oh, you have a podcast? That's so cool. What's your podcast about?" I'm like, "It's about death." And they're just like, "Oh." And 50-50. They're either like, "Oh, that's interesting," or they're like, "What is wrong with you? Why would you have a podcast?" I mean, I try to just not tell honestly anybody unless they like I really know them or get to know them because I'm like, it's just
Oh, I hear you. Try
yeah.
writing a book about cadavers. People would be like, "Oh, you're writing a book. You got a book deal. That's so exciting. What's it about?"
Yeah.
Well, cadavers and interesting research done with cadavers. And I'm like, "Okay, see ya." Okay, I gotta run.
Well, see, that's so interesting to me and very very relatable. And that I mean, I'm immediately so curious as to and now this is, I guess, sort of a cliche question, but like, where did that come from? Where did you like? How did that interest start?
Yeah, that
Who?
was I used to write a column for salon.com about
Yeah,
various things relating to medicine and the human body. And I like to go out to the fringes of the topic, and report on things that don't get reported on very much. But I was walking around the basement of the UCSF Medical School library and I came across a whole row of bound journals, and it was the proceedings of the STAP car crash conference, and which I had never heard of. And I took down one of the bound collections of journals. I was flipping through, and I was reading about how cadavers were used to calibrate the first crash test dummies in the 50s and 60s. Nobody thought about automotive safety. It was just all about let's design a really cool car. And then, very quickly it was clear that people were dying and being maimed in horrible ways, and that safety should in fact be incorporated into design. And so to make a crash test dummy, to have the information the dummy registers be meaningful, you need to know, well, what does that impact do to the human body? So cadavers were used, and I wrote this column about it, a piece about it. And a few months later, I was talking to an agent who said, well, when you think about a book, what columns had the highest hit rates? And that column had the, I don't know if it was the highest, but it suggested that people were curious about it. They found it interesting. They weren't put off, or maybe they were. Maybe they clicked on it, read a paragraph, and then went, "Oh, okay, enough about the
sure.
ixnay on the
Yeah,
cadaver case." But so that was how I went down that road. I don't have any background in this area. I don't have a biomedical background. I wasn't brought up by morticians or any of that. It was just I
yeah,
stumbled onto this. I wrote about it. People responded. There was a second column that had to do with cadavers that was about how much the humans, it was a Thanksgiving Day column about how much does the stomach hold before it will burst.
Oh, okay.
And there was a very bizarre cadaver study done in the 1800s to address that. So I wrote about that. And that one also had high hit rates. So the agent I was communicating with at the time said, "It seems like you ought to write a book about cadavers and cadaver research." And I'm like, that is a terrible idea. Who is going to buy? Who's going to go into a bookstore, like look at a table of new nonfiction and go, "Oh, this book about cadaver research. I'm going to buy that." I'm like, it seemed highly improbable, but there were a number of editors at publishing houses who were like, "Absolutely, we want to buy that book." So I did write the book, and it did well. It did
Yeah.
better than any of my other books. So I think there is kind of a broad curiosity. I mean, we all end up that way, right?
That was something that I thought about while doing this too, was like, well, it's the most relatable. You want to do something that's relatable. And it's like, this is literally the most relatable topic on the planet. It happens to every single one of us. You would
Exactly.
think, you would think it'd be a no-brainer, but of course there's all those caveats to it. Do you feel like the cover of, were there different covers for Stiff? I know there was like a toe tag
Hmm.
type cover. Do you feel like
Yeah.
that kind of drew people in a sense too, or
Um,
scared people away? Like,
I think it was a good cover. It's in
I thought
fact
it was a
not
great cover.
a
I
great
loved it.
cover.
Yeah.
I did too. It wasn't the original. The original was really weird.
Yeah.
The original cover was a dead guy. I mean, it wasn't a dead guy. It was a model. It was somebody
Yeah.
with a shaved head lying face down with a typewriter in front of the head, even though the head is face down and like kind of typing.
Okay.
And the piece of paper in the typewriter says "Stiff" by Mary Roach, which is weird because the dead guy, that suggests the bald dead
Yeah.
body is Mary
It's you.
Roach. And it was weird, and the color was kind of gray, and I didn't know. It was my first book. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know, kind of weird, but whatever.
Yeah.
Somebody at Borders, I think Borders Books and Music, said, we like this book and we'd like to feature it, but you need a better cover because this is horrible. So my publisher at the last minute did the feet with the toe tag
Yeah.
cover. And I actually fought against that cover like an idiot because I thought it was too reminiscent of 6 Feet Under, which was really popular at that time.
Yeah.
And I thought it seemed like a knockoff. And I also felt like a toe tag was inappropriate because that's a morgue thing, not a research thing. And they're like, you are overthinking this. Just back down, Mary Roach. And so they that was the cover that was done, and it's great. It's a great cover.
Yeah.
I really liked it. It's been there's a new cover now because the whole backlist was redesigned. So
Hmm.
all 7 books, I guess it is, were done by the same designer. So I like the new one quite a lot. It's a little bit different. I don't have a copy of it here. Yeah, but I did come to love the toe tag one, even though I fought against it. Never show an author a cover.
I would assume I've never done it. Writing a book seems hard to do. And then after you do all of that, you're like, well, now I got to figure out the perfect photo that encapsulates all of this work that I've done. And it's got to, draw attention. Yeah, it's just,
Oh, you have no idea. And
I
it's not
can't
the author,
imagine.
it's like
Yeah.
the art, the whole higher ups of the publishing house. I mean, if it's a major book, there are multiple designers who they solicit comps, like a sketches from, and then they choose the ones they like 2 or 3 that they like, and they kind of cross their fingers and send them to the author.
Yeah.
Some authors have a like right of refusal built into their contract for the cover.
Sure.
Like they have like that you can't force the cover through if the author doesn't like it. I don't have that. And my publisher, W. W. Norton, they've been great.
Yeah.
They solicit feedback, and if I really don't like the direction, they'll try another direction. So, but you work on a book for 3 more years with your life, you care what the cover looks like.
Yeah, I would imagine it would stress me out. I could already tell that would be
See, it
something.
would distract you from death. You need to publish a book.
Yeah, I
There'll be
need to.
something else for you to stay up in the middle of the night thinking about.
I mean, it again. Yeah, it's like it's your movie poster. I mean,
Hmm.
it's such an important part of the book. And like I said, I remember seeing stiff in bookstores and immediately being drawn to it. And
Yeah.
just, you know,
The
I,
hardback cover in
yeah,
particular was really pretty. And those
yeah,
feet are live feet. Not only are they a live person, but
yeah.
they were given a Photoshop pedicure. Like
Oh,
those are some good looking, supposedly dead feet.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean the whole thing. It's great. And I don't mean to do a whole podcast episode on the cover of a book you wrote 20 years ago, but it's a great cover and it had to be.
It is a
Yeah.
great cover. Yeah.
I was definitely curious about that. But I would love to talk about your new book. Of course, now I'm like, well, how did you get to the cover of this one? But we could skip that.
No,
But
yeah, that is a story unto
I,
itself, the cover.
if
Yeah.
you'd like to tell it, I'd love to. I mean, it's another great cover.
It's a great cover.
Yeah.
I mean, people can't see it right now, but
Yeah,
yeah, they'll
they'll
see
see
it.
it soon.
It's a face and it's got multiple, it's like a face that's in little bits and pieces, which is really, this is a book about the human body as bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And it's a face that's got I don't know how many bits and pieces, but multiple lips and three sets of eyes. And it's all like little circles and shapes, almost like construction paper cutouts. But it's very cool. And I fought for that cover because the other covers that people were suggesting, designers were suggesting, incorporated like you know, a bionic hand or a person with a bunch of bionic parts. And I'm like, this is not a book about prosthetic limbs. It's not a book. That's not what I do. It's not a roundup of, regenerative medicine. It's a much more human take. And that's why I liked that the cover has a face and not an arm or something or a hand.
Yeah.
So there was a certain amount of discussion about that cover, shall we say.
That's definitely something I'm curious about as well is what were you hoping to get out of the process of writing this book and what were you sort of hoping people would get from it
Well,
when they read it?
sorry to cut you off there.
No.
I mean, I am always just trying to find the most interesting scenes, people, things going on. Like I'm never writing a book that's a comprehensive take on the latest blah blah blah. That's
Yeah.
for the pages of Wired magazine or the Science Times, because I started writing this book 3 years ago. One of the companies that I report on in the book is already out of business. People have died. I mean, you can't be writing a cutting edge piece on the latest news in prosthetic limbs. First of all, that doesn't interest me or my readers. I mean, that's a news story, and I don't write news stories. I'm trying to kind of just take a broader look at, what are some of the challenges and can you ever really replace pieces of the human body? You can come up with things that are helpful to somebody whose parts are broken or missing or decayed or whatever it is, but it's almost impossible to create something that is as good or better. I mean, that sort of futuristic cyborgy stuff is not where my head is. So I'm interested in things like if somebody has a limb that is healthy but underperforming and they want it taken off. And why is it so hard for them to find a surgeon to cut off that foot? There is this sort of bias for wholeness, even when the quote unquote healthy foot is holding you back, is inferior to what you could get. But on the so there's just all these kind of interesting human elements of it. It's rather than a look at the technology, even though there are, I do explain, induced pluripotent stem cells and some of the things that are being done in that realm and bioprinting as well. But it's not just the mechanics and the science of it. It's and I don't know if people are familiar with my books, they know that I'm a bit of a wingnut and I'm kind of interested in the elements of it that aren't necessarily obvious.
Sure.
If you look back to the early days of replacing teeth, there's this moment in the middle of the last century, the 40s, 50s, 60s, even early 70s, where people were having all of their teeth pulled at once at a very young age
Yeah.
and getting dentures. And it was a kind of a craze. It was like the kind of all the rage. Paul McCartney's dad told him, when you turn 21, lad, go have them all out and you get a nice bright white smile. And, at
Wow.
that point, dentures gave you maybe 25% of your chewing potential. They would slip, they would smell. it was a horrible thing to have done at such a young age if you didn't need it. And yet people, there's this sense of if it's new and it's technology and it's man-made, it's going to be better for me. And
Yeah,
or that was the sense then. And yeah, there was a thread on Reddit about this because I was like, did that really happen? And 1,000 people wrote in and talked about their grandparents mostly who'd had this done at, in their 20s, sometimes 30, sometimes teens. And so sort of just embracing this technology. And it just wasn't it 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 wasn't a good technology. My dad, he was 65. I think I mentioned he was 65 when I was born. I never knew him having back teeth. He'd lost all his molars and he would chew his food with his front teeth, which sounds really awkward, but he could eat anything. He never wanted to get dentures, and I think he did better just kind of chewing with his front teeth, although it looked a little
sure.
strange. Kind of like, well, I'm not going to do it because people can't. You might enjoy
You can do it just for me if you'd
my
like.
impression of my dad beavering his food, as my brother put it. So, yeah, there can be kind of a bias toward what's new and exciting and technological, but at the other side of that is there can also be a bias for against that. There particularly something like I have a chapter on ostomy, which is when you have a section or all of your colon removed such that there's an opening to the outside and a pouch or a bag
Yeah,
that is sort of serving as a rectum now. And there's a tremendous like stigma attached to that and a lot of hesitation. And I talked to a lot of people who'd had it done. I went to was a 5K run for the United Ostomy Associations of America, and people would describe, how much better it was in this case because they weren't like tethered to a bathroom. They could, there's a if you have that kind of colitis or Crohn's and it's really serious, you're like not comfortable unless there's a bathroom close by.
yeah.
So now they've like there's a certain amount of freedom in it, and but the hesitation, like it's like it's outside the body. It's not part of the body. It's difficult to imagine, to accept that until, you have it done and you realize how much better your life is now, and plus you're dealing with other people's reactions and that's really tough with ostomy.
Is there anything from like different conversations you had or research that you've done that really stuck out to you? It seems like the colostomy is something that sort of stuck out to you. Is there anything really that really stuck with you through the 3 years of writing the book?
Sure, I spent some time in a 1950s era iron lung from the polio era.
I read a little bit. Yeah, please.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear about that.
that was yeah, that was a really interesting evening.
I bet it was.
I
Yeah.
I had imagined spending the whole night in it. The thing with it that's I didn't make it very long.
Yeah.
Because I mean, on the one hand, there's this machine that it's deciding when do you inhale and when do you exhale. You are completely not controlling that. You're gonna inhale and then exhale, and so you can't really talk. You can't have a conversation because you cannot talk on the inhale. I mean, you and I are talking, and we are. If you're inhaling, you have to stop, talk, continue inhaling, or you talk on the exhale. But when it's a machine making that decision, you try to say something to someone, and you're just about. If I was going to say, "Okay, Mark," which I was saying when I was in there, "Okay, Mark," it
Yeah.
completely cuts you off. The other thing about it is, although I mean, it is a it's negative pressure, so it's very similar to how we breathe, as opposed to a ICU ventilator, which is kind of like a medical leaf blower. It's just inflating your lungs, blowing down, or like a CPAP machine. This
Sure.
is a very natural way to breathe, and it's relaxing in a way. But so you're on the one hand, it's like I'm breathing deeply in and out. It's very relaxing. But the other side of that is that it has to be a tight seal. There can't be a leak anywhere. The only opening has to be your mouth and nose. So the neck is very tight. It's like a camera lens, diaphragm, not a lens, but the thing that opens and shuts to let the light in. It's like
Sure.
clamping on your neck pretty tightly. So, and you can't roll over. You can't just move onto your back or your side on your own. So that's a little awkward, but but it addressed this question I had, which is if you read memoirs from the polio era, the moment when somebody, I mean, polio hit people fast, paralytic polio, where one day they wake up, they're having trouble moving certain parts of the body, and by the next morning, they're struggling to breathe. And so these folks were, hurried to these to clinics or facilities that had row upon row of iron lungs, and they were put in there and suddenly they could breathe. And the way they described first going into an iron lung, you would imagine fear, claustrophobia, terror, depression. Then people were like, it was the most relaxing, the happiest moment because now they're not struggling to breathe. Now they can actually relax and breathe and sleep. And I'm sure, a couple weeks down the line, they weren't as excited about it, but
Yeah.
they were alive. They were going to make it and they could breathe. And there was a whole kind of camaraderie because there were a lot of those iron lungs together. There were mirrors so that you could see what was going on in the room. Of course, you're lying on your back. There were ways, kind of aftermarket things to enable you to write, to turn a page of a book. I'm not saying it was a pleasant life, but it was a
Yeah.
life, and
Yeah.
and it was a community, and I just wanted to get the smallest sense of what that was like, and so I found somebody who his wife had passed away the year before, and he still had the iron lung in the room. And so and it was very nice of him to let a stranger stop by and
Yeah.
get into the iron lung.
Obviously, I guess you just sort of explained what was going on and what you were doing. It wasn't just like, hey, let me give that thing a try.
Yeah, I
So,
had there's a woman who works with patients who have chronic lung issues, and patients. She had worked with this woman when she was alive. She had been one of her doctors. So she introduced me, or she put me in touch with this guy. So it wasn't a complete out of the blue. You
you'd
don't
shoot
know
him an
me.
email. Yeah.
I'd like to come visit and spend the night, which sounded like some bizarre fetish.
How long did you end up staying in there for?
Uh, okay, about 7 or 8 minutes.
That's probably a lot
Well,
longer than I'd make it.
it was cranked up to 11, man, because she
Yeah.
needed that. And so it was like it was it was not adjusted right for me. So I was getting that thing where your fingers are tingling, like it felt
Yeah.
like it probably wasn't medically a good idea for me to stay in there. He turned it
Sure.
down, but it just felt like because it was just I mean, you're breathing like every breath is like a full expansion of your lungs, and it was kind of too much. I think if and also I can't sleep on my back, and also
Same.
and they had one of those clocks on the wall where every hour the bird sings a different tune, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what the hell? I'm not going to get any sleep at all.
Yeah. You're literally describing, I think, a nightmare situation right now. Like people
So
have dreams like that, I think.
I'm like, Mark, I'm good. Get me out of here. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm like conscious of my breathing now just from that conversation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, I do a lot of deep breathing exercises just because it helps with
Right.
just life.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine. 7 minutes sounds like more than enough time
Yeah.
to
It
get
was,
the
and
sense of what you're looking for.
exactly. But it's just fascinating because that technology, negative pressure breathing, as opposed to the machines in the ICUs, the early models of that before electricity, they had to be operated like somebody on pedaling a bicycle, or they had to be, manually operated. There was one model where the person in the iron lung, obviously this is somebody struggling to breathe, they had to keep like moving the wall in and out themselves. I'm like, this is a very limited
Wow.
use, this device. There's a drawing of it. I don't have it reproduced in the book, but it was in a article in the history of negative pressure breathing. I'm like, dude, that's not a useful machine.
No,
If
it's wild.
you're the one having breathing and you have to keep pulling this, you know, door in and out like a diaphragm. It's kind of like you are
Yeah.
going to provide the movement of the diaphragm. Yeah,
Wow. Wild. We're getting close to an hour here, so I don't keep you too long. I appreciate you doing this, but
sure.
I guess I'm kind of curious as to where you think all of this is going and like where we're gonna be in, I don't know, 30 years from now, 40 years from now. Like, do you have any sort of opinion on when you're just like no longer yourself? Like, when are you no longer
Right.
you
Yeah, it's like
in the process? Yeah.
when I was a kid, my neighbors used to take apart bicycles and put them back together. And I
Sure.
remember there was a point where my my little banana seed stingray, it really started to be not my banana seed stingray anymore. They'd replaced so many parts on it. I think that there will come a time where replacement, some version of a replacement organ can be printed. We're not there now. We're printing like little patches of muscle. I mean, you have to get the cells aligned properly for what the function of that muscle is. It's really complicated. Nobody's printing nerves. Nobody's printing capillaries. You gotta kind of hope that the body, the body's very good at generating a blood supply. Capillaries, if you gain weight, it starts to grow capillaries to feed that tissue. So bioprinting is at a point where we're trying to figure out what will the body do itself and what do we have to do? Because if you can imagine trying to print an organ that has multiple types of tissue, you're going to need a different extruder head for each type of material. And you're going to have to figure out a way like, okay, collagen fibers, that's not liquid. You've got to make it liquid and then print it, and then it's going to like reassemble itself. It's so complicated.
Yeah.
However, there are, I saw image of a single mouse ventricle. Okay, a mouse that's very, very small. And the ventricle, it didn't have valves on either end, but it was beating and it was staying alive in that mouse. So if that's where we're at, go forward a couple of decades, and I can imagine, sure, an entire organ being printed, but it's so complicated. That was what I found interesting, just the specific challenges, because it's not the same as printing a multicolor brochure. It's similar in some ways. It's like the head going along, and if you're printing, say, a hard-boiled egg, it'd be like shell, 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 white, 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 yolk, 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 white, 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 white shell. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's going along and it's laying it down layer by layer. Of course, there's other methods as well, but this particular method, and it's changing extruder heads and it's tissue, it's living tissue, also, collagen and extracellular stuff, but the living tissue, one of the things they have to do to be able to print collagen, it has to do with enzymes. But if you're printing live cells, that would kill the enzymes. So you need to maybe use like a clotting material, like a fibrinogen, sort of a thing that promotes clots. And I may be getting this slightly wrong from my memory, but it's just amazingly complicated. And so even though it seems as though things aren't that far along, it's very impressive what is going on. And yeah, 20, 30 years from now, probably, or they'll be printing organs. But it would be so much easier if more people were just willing to donate, to become
Sure.
donors. It'd be so
Yeah.
much easier just to have a situation, or even like in some European countries where the default is that you're a donor and you have to take action to not be a donor. Here, it's the opposite. The default is I'm not a donor, so you have to take action and put a dot on your license or fill out a form. It's so just a simple change like that. That'd be so much easier than figuring out a way to print a heart.
Sure. I guess I'm looking at it too in like the sense of like what you're saying, people that need this kidney or liver or whatever it is, and then the people that just like want. I feel like there's like this part of society now where they're just like, well, when am I just going to be able to live forever? When am I just going to be able
Oh,
to like get new parts? When am I going to be able to swap out
right.
the old for the new? You know
Well,
what I mean?
you should talk to there's a surgeon in Italy. You don't hear much from him anymore, but he was advocating for whole body transplant. In other words, instead of getting a new heart and then a new kidney and then new liver as they wear out, you would just get the whole body. In other words, they take your head off and then attach it to a whole new body. And that was actually done on primates in the 70s. Dr. Robert White, there's a book out called Dr. Humble and Mr. Butcher, or vice versa.
One of the first episodes I ever done, Dr. Scalacci, I think, was it?
Brandy Scalacci, yes,
Yeah. She was
absolutely.
one of the first people I ever talked to on this podcast. We talked about
Yes,
that book. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
Crazy.
yeah,
That book is wild.
I spoke to Dr. White before he died about that project. Of course, because spinal nerves can't be reconnected,
Sure.
that you would have been just a head on a pillow. You would
Yeah.
have had this beautiful new body, but you couldn't use it. But it was an interesting idea rather than
Sure.
piecemeal replacing one organ at a time or one joint. You just get this brand new spanking like 25-year-old body. the whole thing. But
Yeah.
then Dr. Cannavaro, he's like, he had made noise about, I'm all set to go. I have a volunteer. Well, the volunteer thankfully backed away.
Yeah.
But then he's like, actually, now that I think about it, why would you want this old aged face on this brand new body? So I think you could just take the brain. We're going to like take a brain, put it in a whole new body.
Yeah. Just
So, if you talk to him, that's where things are heading. I personally can't see that happening for quite some time.
sure.
First, of course, got to figure out how to reattach spinal cords. But the other thing is, I just, the body is not just bits and pieces; it's a whole system, and there's systems communicating, and there's all manner of unknowns that are going to come up. I mean, I yeah, I'm not as optimistic as Dr. Cannavaro.
Well, one day we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I'm just excited to see what happens next. I can't, I'm very excited for 20 years from now, what's going to happen and what we're doing and who
Well,
knows.
you're young, so it could be, you may never have to
Yeah.
die. Maybe you've been worried about it for nothing,
Imagine, right? I stressed this whole time and then 30 years from now, they're like, oh, we figured it out. You could live forever if you want
You can
now.
live, yeah, go ahead. And yeah, everybody's gonna live forever and nobody's gonna be able to find a place to park.
Yeah. Absolute nightmare. Yeah. We're going to have to figure out parking for sure.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you doing this. It's so funny that you sort of pitched a guest because I do like to ask people. I'm always so curious as if there's anybody, who do you think like is there anyone that comes to mind who would be good on this? And is there anyone that you can think of that would be good on this podcast? I'm always looking for new and interesting people. I love to talk to people that are like death adjacent, not necessarily like
Yeah.
in the death
Right.
world. Is there anybody that you could think of, or someone that you think would be interesting to talk about
Um,
death with for an hour?
what Colin Dickey is a really interesting writer. He had the Museum of Morbid Anatomy, I think it was called. He wrote an entire book about kleptocracy, like stealing heads.
Oh, whoa.
Uh,
Okay.
he's a really great writer and he's really smart.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Museum of Morbid Anatomy, I think, which may just be online now. I haven't been in touch with him in a while. I met him once at a death positive gathering.
Oh, cool.
Uh, there is a really interesting woman who's a archivist who wrote an entire book about books that are bound with human skin or rumored to be bound with human skin.
Whoa.
Her name, hang on, is where is her book? There it is. Dark Megan Rosenblum, Dark
Okay.
Archives.
Okay.
She's in the kind of death positive movement, and she
Yeah.
she did this amazing job of kind of figuring out whose skin was that? Was it really human skin? She figured there's actually a way to test it without damaging the book, and super interesting book.
That sounds
Um,
great. Yeah.
she's really interesting. Of course, if you could get Dr. Cannavaro,
That would
I think
be
I think
insane.
he's planning to live forever, as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird.
Well, these are great. I
Yeah.
really appreciate all the different names. I'm going to definitely check that out. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Your book, Replaceable You, is, if you're listening, out now. So go check that out. And yeah, again, thank you so much for doing this. It's really nice to meet you, and I really enjoyed talking.
Oh, same here. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for having me on. And um, good luck with the rest of the podcast season and the whole death thing. I hope you.
I
It seems
appreciate
to
it.
be working for you, but
It's
I
yeah, yeah.
I hope it doesn't keep you up at night too much.
I sleep pretty good. I
That's good.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mary.
so much. All right.
You bet.
Take care.